And you will see that's popped up in front of you that we've started recording. So my name's Ryan. I work for the YMCA Trinity Group, but I'm here today on behalf of the Truly Young People's Collaborative Group, which is essentially a network of different organisations from the statutory sector and the third sector coming together to develop a local offer for you as schools. I'm also joined by some colleagues here as well, including Joanne from Healthy Schools, who will be administering the digital training needs analysis, which comes as a result of the competency framework, and she'll be talking a bit later. And Helen Riley, who was very kindly organised the administration and IT systems. So without her, we wouldn't be here. And my colleague Pretty will also be helping us out with questions from the chat. So without further ado, I'm going to go straight in to an activity. So you will in a second be put into breakout rooms. You automatically get assigned to them. So don't worry if you've been kicked out of the main group, it will automatically assign. And Pretty's just going to add the questions into the chat. So we'll give you a moment to make a note of these, because when you do, what we did find is that when you go out to breakout rooms, you can't necessarily see the chat, which is a bit unfortunate. So do have a moment to make a note of these so you can take them with you. You are going to have 10 minutes for this, and there'll be groups of 3 or 4, possibly 5, depending on numbers. So a good opportunity for you to say hello and just start thinking about what you currently do around your mental health training offer for staff. So Helen, would you be able to put people into their groups?
It is.
Okay, so I think everyone is pretty much back now. Apologies again, whenever we do these things virtually, they're not ideal, are they, going into breakout rooms and chat, and by the time you've got in, it does condense the time you've got available. But in any case, these are things that you're perhaps already considering. But I wonder, we've got a couple of minutes, if someone from one of the groups wanted to feedback, then ideally, if you know how to raise your hand with a little emoji, then do that. But if not, please put your hand up physically, and one of my colleagues, Pretty, maybe can spot you and ask me to have a chat with you. Any volunteers? This is where everyone rushes all at once.
Helen Birch has raised a hand.
Helen, do you want to unmute and give us some feedback from your group?
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't very good in my group. I had to run upstairs and get a microphone.
Oh, bless you. Don't worry.
So I can't really submit what colleagues said, other than, like me, I'm sure they're overwhelmed with the amount of mental health issues that are emerging both amongst students and staff. I did say that we as a school, I'm at the King's School in Peterborough, we completed the Wellbeing Award for Schools 2 years ago, which gave us a framework in which we were able to structure provision for all stakeholders, including commitment in both our vision and our statement of values, etc. So all our policies refer, where relevant, to mental health and wellbeing. And we also paid for, out of inset, for one of our pupil support officers to complete the mental health trainer course, so she can now deliver to staff. So with that and the Cash 2 remote course, we've now, at the end of this month, we should have 69 staff, including 12 students, year 12 students, qualified as mental first aiders. So I think we're doing something to scratch the surface. And I said also that I'd signed up over the weekend to the National Health Service commitment to send some specialist teams into schools, which I think we all ought to do. Apparently they're going to send some practitioners in to work with schools, so I've signed up to that, but I'm acutely aware that it's just scratching the surface. And every day there's another suicide attempt or suicidal ideations, etc., and it's really very worrying indeed.
very challenging. Helen, I do remember you talking before at one of the forums. I think I remember you talking about what you did in the school. So thank you for sharing that. We haven't got time for any more feedback, but I suppose the premise behind this is just to start to think about not just about what training you're accessing and being able to attend training, which is great anyway, but it's thinking about why and how we got to decisions about what choices we're making when we're accessing training. So hopefully that sort of helps you think about that going forward. What I want to do now is move on, and we're thinking about the why. So I don't think some of these stats will be a surprise to people, especially given, Helen, what you were talking about, and recent reports that have been released. NHS Digital released a new research. So some of these things you're probably already aware of, but it just re-emphasizes the need for us to think about how we address that within our roles, whether they're in schools, as practitioners, as services, and thinking about what we can do, but also where our role stops and someone else's starts. But so it's all part of this consideration about a whole school approach to it. And in summary, really, I suppose the rationale behind why, as a local strategic network, we thought that a competency framework would be useful is for some of the reasons that you may have discussed in your breakout rooms. There is a lot of interest from people, and that's really great that people are wanting to learn and wanting to know more about mental health and what it means to support their children and young people, but also their colleagues. But the capacity to be able to do that is challenging at the best of times. So do you have the number of people that can support that? Do you even have trainers that are capable to deliver training internally? Do you know where to go to find support externally? And as we said, for most statistics, needs are growing, but that also puts an extra pressure and concerns on staff in thinking, do you have the confidence to deal with these growing needs? And then when you identify those needs and when you think, actually, we do want support, we've got that appetite for it. When you go into Google or look at directories of training that's available, it's very complex. And there's a whole range of different courses that have wonderful titles, but do you actually know what they cover? And then moving on to the needs, do you know what your staffing team needs, or you as an individual? And all of those questions really led us to think, actually, there needs to be some support at a local level to help people to navigate the system. So this is specifically on training, but as we've said earlier, navigating the whole mental health system is another challenge. So as I mentioned about a whole school approach, this should be something that people are hearing quite a lot. And if you haven't, then there is lots of literature about this. But essentially, the idea behind this is thinking holistically about how we can create a positive mental health and wellbeing culture in our schools. And some of you would have seen this at a local level, either through the mental health forums that we had in previous years, but also at a national level. So when we've been analysing this with schools and when people have been thinking about their own needs and self-assessing those, it's pretty clear that staff development and knowledge building is crucial to all areas of this. So I'm not going to go into detail about this whole school approach. There's lots of information you can look at outside of this session, but it really just hones in about why CPD sort of encompasses and in the heart of all of this work that we're doing. So hopefully the majority of you received, I know Helen kindly sent out a handout for you yesterday. So I think that covers the vast majority that booked on today. If you have booked on since yesterday, so I think it was yesterday morning, you may not have received this yet, but don't worry. That was really just to give you an overview about the framework as it is. Now we have developed, and we'll talk about how we've digitalized that, but just as an overview in terms of the framework itself and what it looks like, we thought it was useful to have a look at that. An activity we're going to do in a second is something that you'll need access to that. So what is the framework? Well, essentially it's about addressing the needs we mentioned earlier and helping schools to identify the competencies that would assist you in your role to create a positive environment for the children and young people in your care. We've aimed it at key stage 1 to 4, but the principles around it are applicable across the board. But what we are hoping to do in the future is to adapt this for other audiences, whatever they might be. If you've seen it, or even if you haven't, don't worry. But essentially, it's split into 3 stages. We've tried to simplify it, and you may be familiar with these terms in other areas of your school life and CPD. So it starts off at core. So what are the core skills or universal skills that everyone working in a school setting should be aware of? So whether they're a caretaker, an administrator, or a senior leader. And essentially then it thinks about what additional learning as you go through the more specialist roles. So as we talk about those roles, the enhanced one would be those that are working more directly with young people. So teachers, TAs, people that are working on a daily basis directly with young people. And essentially that's about how we apply the theory that we've learned in our core training to practice. So what strategies can you use? And then in your role, so hopefully the majority of you here today do have a specialist role or responsibility for mental health, whether you're a mental health lead, a pastoral lead, a SENCO, whatever it is. Then it's thinking about how you can support the school to develop this whole school approach to well-being and what competencies you might need from that. So that's a very, very brief summary of it. And with the activity we're going to do, hopefully that give you time to actually look through the handout in a bit more detail about what it actually means. But the key to all of this is about continuous learning and embedding it into practice. So yes, you could say the competency framework is a blueprint, but reality is it's a guide for you as schools. So in an ideal world, you would be competent at everything that's on there, but it does give you an overview about the kinds of things that you could be looking at in order to make effective and needs-led decisions about what you access. But also, as it's so much about recognizing what you've already done. So, mental health is such a broad topic that it can be covered in other specialist training, not necessarily labeled as mental health training. So behavior training or steps training and all sorts of different things you may well have accessed. These will help you to identify the competencies that you can gain from other courses that you're doing. In terms of the actual training, the competency framework and the training needs analysis doesn't define the training. I think what's important for people to be aware of is that as a local area, we can't necessarily quality assure the training that's available, but what we can do is help you to make effective decisions about what you're accessing. So as part of this, what there is a quality assurance checklist that you can use, not just in training, but in any procurement of mental health services. But what we are doing is through the digital resource, being able to give you access to local providers that may meet one or more of the stages. And then it's their job to really make sure that they're clarifying where it is they fit with that. For example, our website as YMCA Trinity does show our courses and how they fit into all those different stages. We also wanted to highlight and recognise that some of you may be aware that nationally there's a grant available for schools to develop a senior mental health lead training programme. So what I wanted to do is do a quick poll for people just to find out what people are aware of with that, but also to let you know that as a local area, we are looking at developing a local offer that you could use that grant for. So rather than going straight in when inevitable short notice that DfE give you to be accredited for this program, we decided to use this year as a bit of a scoping exercise to find out what the local need and appetite was, and then to look at developing a local offer combining a lot of different services that are available locally to make sure it's tailored to you. So Helen, could you please just open the poll, and then hopefully you can see that and just quickly give us your responses to that, and we'll capture that just so we can see what people's awareness is. We'll just give the last few people opportunity to fill it in. Okay, Helen, could you end the poll and then share the results, and then we can see. Okay, so you may not be able to see this yourselves, but just as a bit of an overview from people, it seems that a lot of you are aware of the training, so that's great. So you're getting the communication and looking into it. Not many people have booked. We're going to ask the question about what the courses are that you've booked, but there would have been too many options here. So it would be interesting, if you don't mind, and if you have booked something, just to put a comment on the chat or send us an email about what you've accessed, just so we're aware of what people are doing locally. And it seems there does seem be an appetite to think about whether a local offer might be available. So thank you for sharing that. I think the key thing for us as a network was thinking about making courses relevant to you. So, there are lots of national providers out there that are providing courses. What we wanted to make sure, and we weren't able to control what the content of those courses are and how they get the information about local services and pathways. So that is something we just wanted to consider. Okay. How are we doing for time? We're doing pretty well. What I wanted to do is go back into breakout rooms, and I know some of you may well have talked about this when you're giving examples of actual courses in your previous session, to think about how you then apply a course that you have done or a school has accessed to the framework, and think about these questions. So in a second, Pretty's going to put these on the chat, and again, please do make a note of these and think about how you would then apply that. What would be useful, just as a kind of show of hands in some ways, but if people haven't got the framework to hand, please could you put that in the chat, because we may be able to, because of time, we might be able to quickly go over that. I'm wondering whether we just do that anyway, maybe. Okay, what I'm going to do, because we have got a little bit of time, I'm going to share the framework and just talk to you a little bit about it, and then you can go away into your breakout rooms and talk about it. So bear with me a second while I stop this and reshare. Okay, so hopefully people can see, if you can nod, you should be able to see the PDF that I sent round. Essentially what it is a list of statements, really, that you're thinking about how confident you are in each of these areas. And as I said earlier, the idea is that we split it up into the different roles that you might have. As I also said, this is going to be digitalized, so you don't have to then print this off and give it out to people. They circle your responses and you collate it manually. We have digitalized this. The reason we've got this as a PDF is just to give you an overview of what it looks like, and you might want to use it, when you're thinking about the whole school rather than individuals. But as we go through this, it takes 2 or 3 minutes to fill in each section. We progress further. So I'm just skipping on into enhanced. So most of you would be at least the enhanced side of things, so your teachers. you are TAs or your senior leaders. So you would be completing all of these sections. And then, as I said before, it's about how you then apply that into learning. So having that deeper understanding, as it's the statement that's on most of these. And then as you go through into your mental health lead roles, the idea then is thinking about how you can develop that whole school approach to mental health, how you can cascade that knowledge to others, how you can monitor what the provision is and organize training and refresher courses, or to analyze where your school is at, but also to thinking about how you can develop in your mental health lead roles. So hopefully in a very quick roundabout way, that's given you a bit of an overview of what it looks like. So if you can now go into your breakout rooms, which will be automatically assigned by Helen, and think about those questions, maybe come up with an example of a course you've accessed recently and think about where it would fit and how you've used it. And then we'll come back. Feedback. No hands. It is the end of the day, isn't it? That's absolutely fine. I'm not going to pick on anyone, so don't worry. What I would say is because we're coming to the end, if you do have any questions, we might have a couple of minutes at the end to answer them. But as I said, please do put them in and we will come back to you afterwards. So have a think about that. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pass over to Joanne from Everyone Health, who's going to talk to you about what the next steps are and how you get involved in the training needs analysis. Joanne, you need to unmute.
Dear me, it doesn't matter how many times you do this. I always forget. Anyway, so following this webinar and towards the end of next week, when the third and final one will have taken place, everybody on this call will receive the link to the digital version with very clear guidelines on how you'll be able to save, circulate and collate the data from the survey using the school's Microsoft 365 account. The aim of this obviously is to encourage as many staff members to participate, and it takes out all of the work for you in terms of sending out paper copies. To date, there have been a number of schools that have trialled it and they haven't reported any glitches, and they have managed to get to the end of the process. So that's all very sort of positive and hopefully assuring for yourselves. So basically, after you've received the link and you've in the group that I was speaking with, maybe there could be a little introductory staff meeting before the link is sent out to the staff members, just to make them aware of it. And of course, from some of the questions, I think somebody just mentioned the first questions about how confident are you about your understanding of mental health and positive mental health. So there could be just a little bit of introduction to help launch that. But once you have then circulated the survey to your staff members, I would imagine from feedback that I've received from schools about a window of 2 weeks is ample time, considering it takes very little time really for the actual questions to be responded to. And then once all of your staff members have completed the online survey, you will obviously get the results collated in a spreadsheet and obviously in a graph form as well on your Microsoft 365 account. There is a request at that stage, if you wouldn't mind sending through your spreadsheet of responses, but with the staff names deleted, so all of the data is anonymized. That will then feed into this evaluation and an analytical approach that we're taking on behalf of the local authority to identify trends across the participating schools. And then once you have completed and returned that spreadsheet of responses, the mental health lead will then be asked to complete a review and a link to that will then be sent. It consists of 8 questions, which are simply 8 reflective questions, which will help you identify the strengths within your school from the responses you've received, and obviously then where perhaps you will need the next steps for action. And there will be some questions there in terms of if you would like to access further support or consultation. So that's really the process. It's aimed to be as time efficient as possible for everyone concerned, for those people that are involved in administrating it within the school, those people that are going to be responding. So yes, really to encourage as many schools as possible to complete the process for the benefit of the school, and also for feeding in that data which can help shape the training going forward across the local authority. So I think that's everything at this point from me, Ryan.
Okay, thanks, Joanne. So it should be pretty self-explanatory how you get involved in it. Everything that Joanne said is explained on her documentation, which is very clear for everyone to read. What I would say as well is it is designed so that people can self-assess and use this. So you shouldn't necessarily need extra support in actually capturing it and completing it. But there is, so those of you, just so you're aware, if anyone's in the opportunity area, so Peterborough, Fenton, these CAMs, you can get extra support to go through this through YMCA to develop your training needs analysis, and then to identify some funded courses you can access. But anyone can use this as they see fit. And then, as I said, the idea is that then you can use it to help you identify what additional training from lots of different providers locally and nationally might be of use to you to prioritise that.
Ryan, can I just ask a quick question?
Yes.
And perhaps yourself or Joanne have the answer, because I don't. If a school isn't using Microsoft 365, but they're on Google instead, is there an option to use Google Docs, for example, or a Google form? How does that work? Does it translate into a different software at all?
No, it doesn't at the moment. It is literally obviously set up for saving on the Microsoft 365 account. But I'm sure if that school was to wish to proceed, that we perhaps try and find a way around it. Perhaps a Google setup, but at the moment it is based on 365.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that when we were talking about this framework, so for those that are aware of it and been involved, we've been talking about this for a couple of years. Some schools have took it upon themselves to develop their own systems that capture it. So what we're trying to do is centralize it, but predominantly make it easy for you to use. So there are always going to be a few that doesn't quite fit with the software that we've got available. But thank you for sharing that, and do comment to Joanne, and we and Joanne will have a look at how we can adapt that for you as a school. But thank you. And as we said, it takes 2 or 3 minutes to complete each section, so it shouldn't be an onerous task. And predominantly, yes, as a system, we would love to be able to see what people are doing. And in the local area, always say that we can't change systems and change offers until we hear from people about what the needs are. So that is important to share, but ultimately is about you as individual schools, and it is as much about celebrating what you're already doing. But for those that need that bit of evidence to pursue all the wonderful things you want to do as mental health leads or in your pastoral roles, then this could help you to provide some of that evidence as well. Joanne, it's worth saying that this is a requirement for the Healthy Schools Award,
well,
is it not?
All of the schools that have trialled it, obviously it completes the section for mental health. Yes, so that's really how the schools got involved in the first place, because there was quite a lot for a school to do before it was digitized, and this is really sort of it's been the catalyst for this digital version.
Yeah, great, thank you. So we're just going to finish off now. There's our contact details if you need them for more information. But also to talk about the next steps and what else is being planned. Now, there's more details to follow, as it says there, on these, but what we're trying to do locally is tailor the programs that we're offering to local needs. So these are just 5 of the things that we're doing, as well as these webinars. So we will be launching a digital resource for schools. So on the Keep Your Head website, in the background, we are working on develop a school section of the Keep Your Head website, which will give you a whole range of different things. So what local services are available. It'll give details about the training that's available, but also additional resources, so national websites and resources. So do look out for that. We're hoping that will be ready by the beginning of January. We are relaunching the mental health forums. So the Emotional Wellbeing Service will be picking these up and developing them from the spring, I think it is. So they were proved really popular. So we'll be sending out more details about that. And then there's a few other things here. One of them I've already mentioned in terms of looking at developing a local offer for the designated senior lead training, but we're also based on some feedback we've had, looking at specifically targeting some reflective practice work for those that are working, for teaching staff that are working with trauma, which I'm sure a lot of you will be saying that applies to you. And then, of course, specifically around eating disorders and awareness of prevention, because of the rising trend for children that have an eating disorder. So please look out for that in due course. We have got a couple of minutes, so we'll be putting a little very quick feedback poll for people just to tell us what they thought of it, and hopefully it was useful to you. While that is happening, please do also put any comments, questions on the chat, and while people are doing the poll, we will try and answer those questions. As I said, we will be recording the session, B will be sending the slides out, and C, with those slides will be all the information about how you can access the digital resource, and we'll try and answer any questions that come out that we're not able to in the webinars. So thank you for your time. Once you have done the poll, please feel free to be on your way and have a lovely evening.